Hi everyone, how's everybody doing?
Hi everyone. Hey, my name is Peter Robleski, and we're here to talk about some interesting things that are happening in the world. We were going to call this is Jay Sanchez. His real name is Jesus, and some people pronounce that Jesus. We're going to call this thing Peter and Jesus, or Jesus and Peter talk about UFOs. But Susan thought, I don't know, that's nice over there. So, but anyway, this is Jesus and I'm Peter, and we're here to talk about UFOs. So, we're both raised here in Bucks County, in Doylestown, which is a magic place. This weekend with a beautiful friend of Lara in town. Also, the Tibetan monks, the Deepung monks from Tibet were in Doylestown this weekend making a sand mandala. And Susan had a woman in here, or in her group, doing pineal gland activations in Doylestown this weekend. And so we're like, okay, Doylestown, bring it on. So I brought this as proof. This is a book that I created in 1975 about the Bermuda Triangle. I'm going to pass this around. It's got my copyright in there. So I've been into this thing since I was little, and so is he. And I just found that in the crawl space, and I said, ooh, too perfect. So there's some crazy stuff going on. Jay, would you tell me and them about some stuff?
Well, we started searching, because we had this interest about UFOs. We really started diving in. We started traveling through the country and going to festivals and meeting authors and experiencers. And we found a wealth of information that you just cannot dispute.
Well, in the
phenomena.
Yes.
Abductions, cattle mutilations, crop circles, EVPs, hybrid children. There's hypnotic regression stuff. There's implants, out-of-body experiences, orbs.
On the out-of-body experiences, who's ever heard of a near-death experience, NDE? Or an OBE, an out-of-body experience? Or astral travel is another word for it. And these shaman in the Amazon call it shape-shifting, where they go into the form of a bird and fly over there. And then in the military, they call it remote viewing. And so I met a guy, David Morehouse, who said, why do you believe that a shaman in the Amazon can do this, and that a modern person, if you practice, can't project your consciousness to another location? And okay, David, so there's these terms that cross over too. In addition to the topics that cross over, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, astral travel, remote viewing, all the same thing, in a way. None of them provable, none of them possible. Actually, none of them exist. Never mind.
But it's all about the language. What we found was that people use language in a different way to describe things in their lexicon. There's a lot of dissension in the organization. This person's right, they've got they're saying the same thing.
Right. There's religious imagery. There's little pictures of UFOs in the back of religious paintings from the 1600s, and then there's so then you get into this kind of religious aspect of it, where some of the stuff is off limits because it's bad in the views of religion or something. But then there's shadow people. People see these little shadows moving around, and shadow animals, and then there's tricksters. There's all kinds of Native Americans have all kinds of beings that exist, and so there's so much stuff that is kind of hard to put your finger on it. And so in addition to the phenomena in going to these things, we've found some physical evidence. And everybody's always like, well, where's the physical evidence? Where's the piece of the ship? Well, we go to these UFO festivals and people start laying out physical evidence. So, this one guy we meet, Chuck Wade, just a guy that went to the UFO festival. And
Well, he was the son of a friend of Mac Brazel. I don't know if you know that name. It's Crashing Roswell. So he had access to all that land, and he spent his life searching for evidence. And he's found physical evidence. It's being tested now. It's homogeneous metal.
yeah, a hunk of metal, and he's like, oh, you want a piece here? Let me cut a piece of you. Okay. And he cuts off a piece here. Do you know a metal lab that you can test this? Please send it to your metal lab. So it's a homogeneous metal. It's like it couldn't be made unless it was in a gravity-free environment. Everything is completely mixed through it. I mean, as we get into this evidence thing, we'll get into DNA evidence and mitochondrial DNA. I'm not here to say that I'm a scientist and I understand everything, but the deeper you dig into it, and you start to educate yourself and you start to learn and find out, well, how does that test work, and what is that, and what is a radioactive isotope, and you just learn enough, you realize that there is some extremely compelling evidence out there. Extremely compelling evidence. And if you only watch TV, they're not going to talk about it on TV, and they're not going to talk about it. It's not going to be in the paper.
The closest you're going to get is maybe ancient aliens.
Ancient aliens.
Right. So, just real quick, Kim Carlsberg is a woman. She was a producer for Baywatch.
Baywatch producer.
She doesn't have evidence. She's got a lack of evidence. She's been pregnant 3 separate times. All 3 of the fetuses have disappeared out of her womb in
After the first trimester.
Past the first trimester, in the second and third trimester. She's got a beating heart she listens to in the morning at the doctor. She gets home, she's watching TV. She tells a story where she's got a can of Diet Coke in her hand, she's watching TV. Next thing she knows, the TV is going, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, the Coke can in her hand is warm, and there's a little spot of blood on her knee and on the couch, and the baby that was in her is gone. So it's not evidence, it's a lack of evidence. And the doctor says, well, sometimes the body absorbs the fetus. In the second trimester, she's like, I heard his heart beating this morning. You know, what? So anyway, Lear?
Dr. Roger Lear, implant specialist, removed many implants. You've probably seen it on TV. We've met him on a number of occasions. Fascinating, intelligent guy. They're really looking into the technology of what's going on with these implants because they radiate waves, radio waves.
Yeah, they send RF frequencies, 2 different frequencies radiated. They move away from your tweezer.
Yeah, it's all documented on the
They move deeper and deeper into your body. I mean, they migrate through your body. He pulled them out of there, pulled them apart, put them in blood serum, and then overnight, they pulled back together into one object, covered with some kind of organic substance that makes your body not reject it.
Oh, I mean, the substance was as close to in vitro fertilization chemical.
Yeah. So we go to this UFO conference. Dr. Roger Lear is there. The day after the UFO conference, he's going to present this at the National Press Club in D.C. Okay, so we're like, far out. This guy gives us this evidence. He's got a molecular biologist with him to tell about the molecular structure of the thing. He's got a metallurgist to talk about how the metal is from, it's not from Earth because the radioactive isotopes, like the isotope ratio is wrong, and so it's non-terrestrial iron. There's little carbon fibers in there, so he's got these guys to explain this. They're going to the National Press Club. Fox News is there, CNN is there, all these news outlets are there. The next day I get home, like, I go to Google and I'm like, Dr. Roger Lear, alien implant. I'm ready, like, yeah, okay, this is going to crack open. Nowhere. Not there. Not on CNN, not on Fox News, nowhere. Not newsworthy. Not until some guy from Germany who sat there and videotaped the conference and then got back to Germany and then uploaded it from Germany did this information get to the internet. So there's this thing going on with the evidence. So, darn it, we weren't going to talk about anything specific.
I know. I'm supposed to be the governor.
We're not going to talk about anything specific.
It's too deep.
Yeah, it's too deep. But Stan Romanek has had multiple children with multiple women and hybrid children. They're not from Earth. Jim Sparks has complete memories of experience, remembers the language, remembers the message. Whitley Strieber, another author, amazing guy, incredible implants, incredible insights. Chuck Wade, by the way, we made up a contact sheet. We have all this information so that you guys can go and dig and find out more about this, but we're not recommending that. So, information-wise, just more ways that you can, there's these great websites out there, just to burn through these. There's Coast to Coast AM, there's a late night radio show from midnight until 4 a.m., or here it's from 1 a.m. until 5 a.m., it's California from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m. So,
And you can podcast that.
yeah, you can podcast that. So, Disclosure Project. This guy has collected up military people and had them, signed affidavits to say I was involved in this when I was in the military. There's the unknowncountry.com, Dreamland, which is Whitley Strieber's website, an amazing resource for just finding out about more stuff. ESETI, the Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence out in Washington State. This guy has the highest number of documented UFO sightings in the world. If you go there, you will see something you've never seen before. You will see orbs. You will see things flying around. You'll see ships power up. I mean, if you go to his site, he's an amazingly gentle, beautiful guy. Exopolitics is like the political thing, incorporating politics and the UFO thing. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So great websites. Project Camelot, don't forget that one. ThriveMovement.com. You don't need to write this down, you'll get all this. Has anybody seen Thrive? Awesome. Awesome. ThriveMovement.com. So, there's also this aspect of this thing that gets into the traditional.
Yeah, I mean, you look at ancient structures around the world. I'm still scratching my head.
Jesus builds things, by the way. Jesus figures out how things are built, and he's like, how could I build that? And it gets to the point where you can't. There's impossible objects that exist in the earth. And so...
Yeah, so, there's lots of information on all that, chariots of the gods, the Dogon tribe.
Yeah. Do you know about the Dogon? Anybody know about the Dogon? It's a tribe in Africa that their traditions are that, oh yeah, we're from that star system there, and we have 2 suns, and we got 8 planets, and they know everything about that solar system and everything about those planets, and we didn't figure that stuff out until we got the Hubble telescope.
They told it to us before we even knew about it.
Yeah, they told us about how many planets there were and what they're from and which planet they were in that solar system and how many suns there were. They told us that stuff. It's in their 10,000-year-old traditional information of their tribe. Like, huh?
Yeah. Everything that we're talking about is a rabbit hole in itself. And there's rabbit holes within the rabbit hole. You can go so deep into this, it's painful how deep this stuff is. And it really is.
Not to me, but to this guy, Lloyd Pye. This guy, Lloyd Pye, is researching this Starchild Skull. He found this skull in Peru, 900-year-old skull. It's shaped different. It's not made of what our skulls are made of. It's made of different layers, different stuff, big eye holes, little mouth. You look at the thing, it's like, I kind of know what that head would look like if there was flesh wrapped around it.
Right, and they're going through DNA testing now. The preliminary DNA tests say that it is not human at all. And if you look at the cellular bone structure, how the bones put together, it's half as thin as human skull, but it's 10 times stronger. It's just amazing. Huh?
Have they aged it yet?
By carbon dating, it's 900 years old. The female component of the DNA is human. The male component of the DNA is unknown. And the only way to do that farther is to get into this mitochondrial DNA test, which costs millions and millions and millions of dollars. And Lloyd Pye is like, any millionaires out there can hook me up? Come on.
If you have $7 million, you can get involved.
Right.
Because there's 2 movies involved, he wants to do it right. He knows what he has. He's not going to do anything short, but do it 100%. So.
Okay, so this archaeology and traditional thing is total rabbit holes. You can find out about fascinating stuff about the pyramids, but you're never going to figure out how they did it. And so then that rabbit hole leads into the military, political.
Well, all of this UFO phenomenon, what happened? We went in looking for UFOs. That's really neat. Let's go look at that. But what we found is there's layers. It crosses boundaries into the military. It crosses into the elite of the world. There's just so many things that are connected to this phenomenon.
You get into the ramifications of if a UFO could get here, what was the power supply of their rocket? How'd they get here? And did they fly through space or did they come through time? And so if you really start to analyze this, you're saying, maybe there's a power supply we could make use of. Maybe there's time travel we could be involved in. So you really get into this, and then you realize that the geopolitical machine is there to say, there's nothing of interest here. There's nothing you want to see here. We've looked into this completely, and there's nothing to be concerned about, and there's nothing of interest here. Just drop it. And if you stay on it, then dudes in black suits show up, and they take your stuff. So it gets kind of murky. We have a very special person with us today, Laura. And she's been directly involved in that. So I'm not going to talk about that too much because we've got somebody who was involved in that world. But I will tell you that abductions, there's astronauts involved, cattle mutilations, there's astronauts, there is commanders, there's command sergeants, there's this disclosure project, there's people specifically set up to give disinformation, to create more confusion. And so there's disinformation specialists who will present themselves so convincingly. I'm telling you, I'm not one of them.
Anybody ever hear of Edgar Mitchell?
Dude walked on the moon.
Walked on the moon.
Yeah.
We talked to this guy. Noetic scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met him. We talked to him. We asked him, "What'd you see?" He goes, "I didn't see anything, but my friends did." So when someone says something like that to you, an astronaut, how are you supposed to take that?
If Edgar Mitchell was up at the podium as a representative of the United States of America, as one of the men that walked on the moon, he can't say, "I saw UFOs." But if you meet Edgar Mitchell in the bar after he presents, and you start talking to him about what happened, Edgar, they say stuff like that. So that you get into this official story versus what's really going on. And one of the most fascinating things about this thing is when they're done presenting, they do hang out. And you get to hang out with them. And you get to talk, what happened, dude? How was this? How could this happen if this happened? And they start explaining some of the stuff. And so it gets deeper. It gets deeper into, who's ever heard of the Honorable Paul Hellyer, Prime Minister of Canada, who has come forth as a UFO guy. There's people harassed by military people, weapons that fry every electronics in their car. They've been beaten up. There's a guy named Richard Dolan who's written 3 incredible books documenting the history of UFOs, footnoted, research to the hilt.
That's probably the most comprehensive collection of rock-solid evidence. He's a historian. Fascinating stuff. If you want to have a library of documented solid cases.
There's an aspect of abductions where you'll be there, the Greys will be on you, working on you, and then some dude in a military uniform is standing over on the side watching everything. And people just sense this. They can't turn their head, but they can see a guy over there in a military uniform. And so there's this crossover between the Greys and the military. I'm going to defer. So there's just amazing stuff. Project Looking Glass, Project Paperclip, Project Pegasus. Anybody ever heard of that stuff? It just gets deeper and deeper. But again, they're rabbit holes. You're here. It's a person's word on this happened to me, and then you're just like, well, what is this person's experience? What? So anyway, did I say rabbit hole?
Yeah. So
then researchers, right?
Yeah, we could.
Or where were you going to go? I know.
You know, one of the things that we enjoy the best when we go to these festivals, especially out in Phoenix, is the experiencer meetings. Every morning they have a gathering of people. It's private, no media, for people who had direct experience to share, to find answers. A lot of them are confused. Some are newbies. Some are oldies. That's where the magic really happens.
Some are Syrian light warriors.
And
That's where I met her.
that's where we met her. But you know, what we found looking at all of this stuff is that there's an underlying message. We're very special people on this planet.
Yeah, you know, when I keep on saying don't go into these rabbit holes, we did make up a list. There's a lot of stuff you can look up when you get home. But in a way, after we've done this now for years, and we had this experience in Phoenix in our most recent, where we went to Sedona first, and we just chilled in Sedona for a couple days, which is a magic place to begin with. Then we went to Phoenix, and I swear we didn't turn on our cell phones. We never turned on our TV. We did not read the USA that they left outside our door. And so for a week, we just thought about nothing but consciousness and perception. And what are we experiencing? And everybody that you meet has had an experience to say, this happened to me. And that's something I've never heard anybody ever have happen to them on Earth before. But I meet somebody that tells me this happened. So as we move through this, we meet these incredible people, and some of them are scared, but after you talk to them for a little bit and they meet other people that have had incredible experiences, the fear is something that can be overcome, and you realize that we are being shown through crop circles, through the messages that these ETs are trying to get through to us. The reason that they're so elusive and they just disappear is not to be elusive. They're an incredibly compassionate species, and if they sense fear, they don't want to make you freak out. They don't want to make it so you can't go to work tomorrow. They don't want to make you do something crazy. So if they sense fear, they back off. But what we realized is that what's happening around us as you look into any of these details of this thing, consciousness seems to be expanding. Our awareness, with the internet, you can look up any of these things and you can see videos of reptilians. You can see videos of grays blinking that have leaked out. You can see it. We're starting to elevate our consciousness as a species, and we are moving towards a new possibility. A new awareness. And so Jay and I had an experience in Phoenix that after about a week of just being in this place and just thinking, we'd get up in the morning and first thing he'd say is like, man, you wouldn't believe my dream last night. And we just go right in. And it's like, as he's making coffee, he's like telling me about his dream. And then we're sitting there talking about it. And we came to a place of kind of realization that compassion, the only way to deal with these guys that are gazillionaires who are about to who have controlled the oil and the only way to handle these guys is to give them a standing ovation. Those guys pulled it off. They pulled the wool over 7 billion people's eyes. And we can't be angry. The only path out of this thing is forgiveness and love. And so we came to this place of compassion. We arrived at a place of saying, we could call up J. Paul Getty and say, you dick. But it's not going to help. It's not going to help anybody. Pardon my French. Oh, that's right. So anyway, compassion is the only way. And as we started talking about it, and as we started just bringing through this idea of, wow, none of this, in a way, none of this detail is a concern, because we could step kind of right over this into a grander picture. And when I spend time with this incredible person here, she starts to present a perspective which makes you realize that we are expanding.
And there's no fear. There's really nothing to be afraid of.
There is,
and that's a hard place to be without fear.
and what this stuff, if you look into this enough, you'll find that there's things designed to instill fear in us, to keep us off our guard. And they're called the news and the newspapers. It's called Fox News and CNN. And if you read that stuff, if you watch that stuff, they're telling you about, oh, this might happen, and this might happen, and this might have happened, and this might have happened. But, you know, Terrence McKenna, one of my favorite guys, said the only thing we have is the felt presence of immediate experience. That is all we have in this world, is I experienced it, and you know whether or not it was real or not. You're the only one that knows whether it's real. And that comes from within. And so there's a component of this thing which is about consciousness. And all of the detail in this thing could be kind of pushed under, and you could say that this entire exercise has been done so that we can elevate our consciousness and not be concerned about any of these details. How did they build the pyramids? How did they get those rocks up at Puma Punku? We'll never know the answers to those questions, but what we realize is that by elevating our consciousness, we can move to a new possibility as a human species.
And if you want to get into that, because that's where the UFO phenomenon has gone. At this moment, the books coming out, like Stan Romanek's books, Whitley Strieber's books, these are very good authors talking about their experience, and it's all about consciousness.
Right.
And oneness.
20 years ago it was about abductions.
Yeah, and physical evidence. We're, give me the physical evidence. Now it's about consciousness. So things have shifted in the arena, and that's where we're at.
And with that in mind, with that in mind,
Yeah, with that in mind,
I'd like to step to the side.
Yeah.
And let's talk about consciousness.